Maratha Empire. The Maratha Empire or the Maratha Confederacy was a power that dominated a large portion of the Indian subcontinent in the 18th century. The empire formally existed from 1674 with the coronation of Shivaji as the Chhatrapati and ended in 1818 with the defeat of Peshwa Bajirao II at the hands of the British East India Company. The Marathas are credited to a large extent for ending Mughal rule over most of the Indian subcontinent. The Marathas were a Marathi-speaking warrior group from the western Deccan Plateau who rose to prominence by establishing a Hindavi Swarajya. The Marathas became prominent in the 17th century under the leadership of Shivaji Maharaj, who revolted against the Adil Shahi dynasty and carved out a kingdom with Raigad as his capital. His father, Shahji, had earlier conquered Thanjavur, which Shivaji's stepbrother, Venkoji Rao alias Ekoji inherited, and that kingdom was known as the Thanjavur Maratha kingdom. Known for their mobility, the Marathas were able to consolidate their territory during the Mughal Maratha Wars and later controlled a large part of the Indian subcontinent. After the death of Aurangzeb in 1707, Shahu, grandson of Shivaji, was released by the Mughals. Following a brief struggle with his aunt Tarabai, Shahu became the ruler with the help of Balaji Vishwanath and Dhanaji Jadhav. Pleased by his help, Shahu appointed Balaji Vishwanath and later his descendants as the Peshwas or prime ministers of the empire. Balaji and his descendants played a key role in the expansion of Maratha rule. The empire at its peak stretched from Tamil Nadu in the south to Peshawar in the north and Orissa in western Bengal up to the Hooghly River in the east. The Marathas discussed abolishing the Mughal throne and placing Vishwasrao Peshwa on the Mughal imperial throne in Delhi but were not able to do so. In 1761, the Maratha army lost the Third Battle of Panipat against Ahmad Shah Abdali of the Afghan Durrani Empire, which halted their imperial expansion into Afghanistan. 10 years after Panipat, the young Peshwa Madhavrai's Maratha resurrection reinstated Maratha authority over North India. In a bid to effectively manage the large empire, Madhavrao gave semi-autonomy to the strongest of the knights and created a confederacy of Maratha states. These leaders became known as the Gaikwads of Baroda, the Holkars of Indore and Malwa, the Scindias of Gwalior and Ujjain, the Bhonsales of Nagpur, the Meheres of Vidarbha, the Puars of Dhar and Devas, and the Nevalkars of Jhansi. In 1775, the East India Company intervened in a Peshwa family succession struggle in Pune, which led to the First Anglo-Maratha War in which the Marathas emerged victorious. The Marathas remained the preeminent power in India until their defeat in the Second and Third Anglo-Maratha Wars, which resulted in the East India Company seizing control of most of the Indian subcontinent. A large portion of the Maratha Empire was coastline, which had been secured by the potent Maratha navy under commanders such as Kanoji Angre. He was very successful at keeping foreign naval ships at bay, particularly those of the Portuguese and British. Securing the coastal areas and building land-based fortifications were crucial aspects of the Marathas' defensive strategy and regional military history. Nomenclature. The Maratha Empire is also referred to as the Maratha Confederacy. The historian Barbara Ramosak says that the former is a designation preferred by Indian nationalists, while the latter was that used by British historians. She notes, neither term is fully accurate since one implies a substantial degree of centralization and the other signifies some surrender of power to a central government and a long-standing corps of political administrators. Although at present the word Maratha refers to a particular caste of warriors and peasants, in the past the word has been used to describe all Marathi people. History. The empire had its head in the Chhatrapati as de jure, but the de facto governance was in the hands of the Peshwas after Chhatrapati Shahu I's reign. After his death and with the death of Peshwa Madhavrao I, various chiefs played the role of the de facto rulers in their own regions. Shivaji and his descendants. Shivaji. Shivaji was a Maratha aristocrat of the Bhosle clan who is the founder of the Maratha Empire. Shivaji led a resistance to free the people from the Sultanate of Bijapur in 1645 by winning the fort Torna, followed by many more forts, placing the area under his control and establishing Hindavi Swarajya. He created an independent Maratha kingdom with Raigad as its capital and successfully fought against the Mughals to defend his kingdom. He was crowned as Chhatrapati of the new Maratha kingdom in 1674. The Maratha kingdom comprised about 4.1% of the subcontinent, but it was spread over large tracts. At the time of his death, it was reinforced with about 300 forts and defended by about 40,000 cavalries and 50,000 soldiers, as well as naval establishments along the west coast. Over time, the kingdom would increase in size and heterogeneity. By the time of his grandson's rule, and later under the Peshwas in the early 18th century, it was a full-fledged empire. Sambhaji, Sambhu Raje. Shivaji had two sons, Sambhaji and Rajaram, who had different mothers and were half-brothers. In 1681, Sambhaji succeeded to the crown after his father's death and resumed his expansionist policies. Sambhaji had earlier defeated the Portuguese in Chikka Deva Rare of Mysore. To nullify the alliance between his rebel son, Akbar, and the Marathas, Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb headed south in 1681. With his entire imperial court, administration and an army of about 500,000 troops, he proceeded to expand the Mughal Empire, gaining territories such as the Sultanates of Bijapur and Golconda. During the 8 years that followed, Sambhaji led the Marathas, never losing any of the battles or forts to Aurangzeb. In early 1689, Sambhaji called his commanders for a strategic meeting at Sangameshwar to consider an onslaught on the Mughal forces. In a meticulously planned operation, Ganaji and Aurangzeb's commander, Mukarrab Khan, attacked Sangameshwar when Sambhaji was accompanied by just a few men. Sambhaji was ambushed and captured by the Mughal troops on the 1st of February 1689. He and his advisor, Kavi Kalas, were taken to Bahadurgarh by the Imperial Army, where they were executed by the Mughals on the 21st of March 1689. Aurangzeb had charged Sambhaji with attacks by Maratha forces on Burhanpur, Rajaram and Maharani Tarabai. Upon Sambhaji's death, his half-brother Rajaram ascended the throne. The Mughal siege of Raigad continued, and he had to flee to Vishalgad and then to Jinji for safety. From there, the Marathas raided Mughal territory, and many forts were recaptured by Maratha commanders such as Santaji Ghorpade, Dhanaji Jadhav, Parshuram Pant Pratinidhi, Shankaraji Narayan Sachayev and Melgiri Pandit. In 1697, Rajaram offered a truce, but this was rejected by Aurangzeb. Rajaram died in 1700 at Sinhagad. His widow, Tarabai, assumed control in the name of her son, Ramaraja. She led the Marathas against the Mughals, and by 1705 they had crossed the Narmada river and entered Malwa, then in Mughal possession. Shahu Maharaj. After Aurangzeb's death in 1707, Shahu, the son of Sambhaji, was released by Bahadur Shah I, the new Mughal emperor. However, his mother was kept as a hostage of the Mughals in order to ensure that Shahu adhered to the release conditions. Upon release, Shahu immediately claimed the Maratha throne and challenged his aunt Tarabai and her son. The spluttering Mughal-Maratha war became a three-cornered affair. The states of Satara and Kolhapur were organized in 1707 because of the succession dispute over the Maratha kingship. Shahu appointed Balaji Vishwanath as Peshwa. The Peshwa was instrumental in securing Mughal recognition of Shahu as the rightful heir of Shivaji and the Chhatrapati of the Marathas. Balaji also gained the release of Shahu's mother, Yesubai, from Mughal captivity in 1719. During Shahu's reign, Raghoji Bhosle expanded the empire eastwards, reaching present-day Bengal. Khandirav Dabhade and later his son, Triambakrav, expanded it westwards into Gujarat. Peshwa Bajirao and his three chiefs, Pawar, Holkar, and Scindia, expanded it northwards up to Attic. Peshwa era. During this era, Peshwas belonging to the Bhatt family controlled the Maratha army and later became de facto rulers of the Maratha Empire till 1772. In due course of time, the Maratha Empire dominated most of the Indian subcontinent. Balaji Vishwanath. Shahu appointed Peshwa Balaji Vishwanath in 1713. From his time, the office of Peshwa became supreme while Shahu became a figurehead. His first major achievement was the conclusion of the Treaty of Lonavala in 1714 with Kanoji Angre, the most powerful naval chief on the western coast. He later accepted Shahu as Chhatrapati. In 1719, an army of Marathas marched to Delhi after defeating Saeed Hussain Ali, the Mughal governor of Deccan, and deposed the Mughal emperor. The Mughal emperors became puppets in the hands of their Maratha overlords from this point on. Baji Rao I. After Balaji Vishwanath's death in April 1720, his son, Baji Rao I, was appointed Peshwa by Shahu. Bajirao is credited with expanding the Maratha Empire tenfold from 3% to 30% of the modern Indian landscape during 1720 to 1740. He fought over 41 battles before his death in April 1740 and is reputed to have never lost any. The Battle of Palkhade was a land battle that took place on the 28th of February 1728 at the village of Palkhade, near the city of Nashik, Maharashtra, India between Baji Rao I and Kamar-ud-Din Khan, Asaf Jah I of Hyderabad. The Marathas defeated the Nizam. The battle is considered an example of brilliant execution of military strategy. In 1737, Marathas under Bajirao I raided the suburbs of Delhi in a blitzkrieg in the Battle of Delhi. The Nizam set out from the Deccan to rescue the Mughals from the invasion of the Marathas but was defeated decisively in the Battle of Bhopal. The Marathas extracted a large tribute from the Mughals and signed a treaty which ceded Malwa to the Marathas. The Battle of Vasai was fought between the Marathas and the Portuguese rulers of Vasai, a village lying on the northern shore of Vasai Creek, 50 kilometers north of Mumbai. The Marathas were led by Chimaji Appa, brother of Baji Rao. The Maratha victory in this war was a major achievement of Baji Rao's time in office.